Click subscribe to get daily Manchester United content from passionate Reds, only on All for United.
Well, welcome back, guys. This is a tough one. Final match reaction of the season. I've got some great guests with me. Stu, as always, usually helping me out on these reactions. Kai, how you doing, mate? You all right? Nice to see you. And I've got Hammer for the first time on my reaction show. Nice to see you, Hammer. I think I spoke to you on the Spaces the other day. So nice to see you. I've also got Ben, who's just coming to stream as well. So hi, Ben. How you doing, mate? You all right?
Not so bad, thanks.
Good. Right, guys. Well, I don't know if it depends how you look at this one. There's either not a lot to talk about, or there's a hell of a lot to talk about, depending on how positive or negative you want to go. So, Stu, as always, mate, as my right-hand man on these shows, I'm going to come straight to you and get your views on this, and then see what you think, mate.
Look, I didn't really care about today's game, to be honest. I've been in football long enough. It was a bit of a non-starter. We were either going to finish 6th or 7th, so it didn't really matter. And I don't really care whether we were in Europa League or Europa Conference. We've got some kind of European football next season. So for me, it was just it was a bit of a dead rubber. We were never going to go and beat Palace anyway. Palace are a really good side at home, decent. Don't concede many chances. They're probably man for man better than us in the middle of the park as a unit. And I just didn't think or didn't see any way of us getting any kind of grip in the game today. There's been a lot of call on Twitter, etc., for the young lads to be played. It's not the right type of game to bring young lads in and blood them properly. You do that in the summer months. I know we brought Garnacho on, I think, and Shurateri for the last 10 or 15 minutes, or whatever it was. But it was never going to make any difference. We were never going to get back into the game. When you look at the type of football that Bruno was playing today, he did his usual misplaced pass, and we got punished. We have been physically and mentally weak all season. So I didn't expect anything, really, if I'm being honest. I gave a bit of a 3-0 prediction prior to the game because I thought we might turn up and do something. But you've just got to, sometimes in football, you've just got to look at it for what it really is. And you've got to look at it for how it's presented by the players. And it's been one of those games. So I don't think as fans, we should lose any sleep on it. I don't think as fans, we should get upset or uptight by it. I don't think as fans, we should start blaming here, there and everywhere. You close a chapter. We have a 4 to probably 6 weeks off, and then we get back into it first week in July or second week in July when he gets them back. So I just think that's it. It's over. It's done. We move on. Short and sweet, Reece. Short and sweet, mate.
I'm sure there'll be more to come from you, Stu, later on in this anyway, mate. But Emma, what was your thoughts? I mean, obviously we'll get into sort of like next season and a bit of everything, a bit about that as well in terms of Ten Hag's mission next year. But obviously, disappointing end to what has been a fairly disappointing season. What was your kind of overall thoughts, mate, on that?
Yeah, man, it was a rough game to watch. I don't know if everybody was actually sitting there watching it intently. I don't know why I did that to myself. But there was, from the back to the front, things where nothing was clean. The defense was getting twisted in and out from left to right? Like everybody, Maguire and Lindelof were getting twisted about. The midfield couldn't string 2 passes together, and the attack really didn't get anything going because of everything going on behind them, kind of. It was good to see some young kids. They came out with a little bit of fight. Some of them had more fight than the veterans, which was kind of sad. Hannibal, I like him. He has some good movements, and I like the aggressiveness, but he's got to stop getting a card. He can't come in every game and pick up a card whenever he gets a chance to play. But yeah, man, I think it's a rough ending, like you said. Yes, I agree with Stu. Let's put it behind us, move on. We got a new coach coming in, hopefully a new era about to begin. And I will say, though, Stu, I think Ten Hag has been saying, though, that I don't think they're going to get as long of a break as they would like. He wants them back early because he wants to get their asses in shape to run his style. So But yeah, let's move on. Move to the summer. You're muted. Move to the summer and hopefully do the right things in the transfer market.
Yeah, which is something we'll definitely come on to. Just before we come on to Ben, drop your questions in the chat as well. Obviously, this is the last reaction of the year, so obviously the guys will be very keen, I'm sure, to answer a lot of your questions. So drop them into the comments below, and then we'll try and respond to as many as we can. Ben, just initial reactions from you if you can, mate. Obviously, I don't expect it to be all positive, if at all positive, but initial reactions to that and to this season, mate.
To me, I think it was just confirmation of players who are mentally and physically fragged. And you can dress it up as much as you want, but if you're not mentally and physically there, in a game of football or something like that, it will ultimately show over the course of 90 minutes. And I just think that was just another confirmation of where the players are. I think that, like Stu says, I just think you need to just have a complete reset, get away for however long he's going to give them for the summer before he brings them back. Obviously, by that point, you're hoping from obviously reading stuff that there's going to be a bit of a swift movement with regards to transfers in and out, and you just go again. I was hopeful, as I always am with the games, because I'll always try and be positive, but I wasn't it was more on luck rather than judgment. And yeah, it was good to see some of the youngsters play, because obviously I think they've earned the right to at least have a few minutes with what they've done this season. But I think it was just confirmation for Erik Ten Hag of what probably he's read or heard from speaking to Ralf or seen of where the players are. Bruno was his usual flip of a coin self. He'll do something and then he'll just do something like he did for the goal. Defensively, we're just consistently bad, which is at least something. And collectively, we're just not there. There's nothing really. And to be honest, it was just glad it was the last game of the season. Because I think if there'd have been, say, a few more games, I think it'd have just been absolutely horrendous. If there'd have been like 3 more games still to play. But I think it's just good it's the end of the season, because the players are just like, they've been away to Afghan for 9 months on tour and not had a break. That's how they look when you see them on the pitch, because they're doing stuff, but there's nothing actually in the shirt to embody what you want from the shirt that they're wearing. So yeah, sorry to be negative.
No, it's understandable, mate. It's been one of those seasons. It's been difficult to talk about, to be honest, when we've been on some of these shows, and and you try to conjure some positivity out of it, just to create a bit of a show, really. But I suppose it has been a poor season. We've broken records you don't want to break on the opposite end of the spectrum, and I suppose it just. I think in some ways,
Reece, I'm actually glad, as mad as this sounds, that we didn't go and thrash Palace, because it'd have just been. For me, it looked worse, because it's like, well, hang on a minute, you do this on the last game, but we've at least been consistent. So it's not a false dawn for Eric to think, no, but actually, some of these players do deserve to stay. They've still showed their true colours.
No, I totally agree with that. I think they were good today, weren't they, as well? And they showed our frailties, really. They had pace, power, skill, and all things we kind of have lacked this season. There was a lack of quality, wasn't there, in the final third? I think we got to Palace's box, and you just didn't really feel like it was ever going to come. It was a bit poor, really. But no, thanks, Ben. We'll sort of come on to the Rangnick thing. Obviously, we've got some topics below. Again, if you've got any questions, guys, in watching, drop them in the chat, and we'll answer them. But we've got some topics below. We'll come on to Rangnick. We've mentioned that a few times about whether he's been a success or not, and we'll jump onto that. But Kai, your initial reactions to that today and to United this season, I suppose, in as concise as you can.
I think this is the 5th time I come on a show in a row and I say that I have not been hopeful for a while, so I've been unaffected for a while. So this season has basically just pretty much, to be honest, okay, so we all watch football for passion, right? And Today, I had the conundrum of having to choose between watching United or actually watching like people who are actually playing passionately and have something to win. So I decided to open the City game and to open the United game, and I put the United game just in the corner, and I put the mute button because simply I wasn't going to get the passion I could get from a football game. And that basically has happened since, I don't know, since, game 5. So essentially, we've had no passion going through the club, and when people stop doing the basics, then it's very hard to watch United and to appreciate anything that's happening, because how is it possible that a team can have not one good performance, like one, guys, like one, and the funny thing is we still end up what, 6th, even though we haven't had one good performance, which shows that there are some good players or some players that can do something. We can pick up a point here and there and all of that. But just the fact that we can't even string together one good performance, which we can be proud of, just shows there's zero principles, which means no one cares because these guys have been playing football all their lives. So it's not hard to pass a ball 5 yards, looking at, through their lens. So I just think they stopped caring, and then I stopped caring, and then we all stopped caring for a while, and we all gonna keep talking about, of course, the same things because we feel the same way every single week. And even I think today's game, to be honest, I would have rather won the game because it's not like anyone's gonna learn anything new. But guys will just get their 3 points, and it's just at least people are smiling, and at least the babies get to come on a pitch or something. I don't know. So I just think the whole thing has ended very sadly. But no one learned anything new today, like Stu said. And I think when they all stopped caring, I think principles, just general football principles, disappeared. So it was really hard to actually get behind the team. So yeah, I don't have too much to say after that.
Oh man, it's tough, and I think you won't get anybody disagree with you on this panel, and I'm sure in the chat as well. For me, I just wanted to take some sort of positivity out of some level of performance this season, or whether that be the introduction of youth or whatever else, and that's never really happened, and for rightly so. And I think we'll probably see that a little bit next season. And that's something I want to come on to at some stage. But no, totally feel you on that one, Kai,
and sorry, Reece, just to add on that youth thing, I just was thinking to myself, just watching even the last 15 minutes or something, when a player like, let's say, Shoretire gets the ball from one of the experienced players, how can it be that the pass is so hard that he has to use every little bit of his ability that he's got to control this pass to do something else after that? So that's why I think just putting these young guys in there would have been just so poor, because even Bruno, just to give a normal pass, it would have looked like these kids would have had to fight for their lives, which is, I think, why Arsenal have had a slightly easier time, because the experienced players have been able to at least get the ball rolling, at least give them the ball, like Partey has played his part and all of that. So it's been easier for the Sakas to at least get into the final third, play their football, do something. But you can see just no football principle from our end. So you can't bring kids into just where people aren't doing the right thing anyways. And I think then that rubs off, because, I mean, look at the personalities like Garnacho. You can see he's got that, that Cristiano type of personality that, whatever. You don't want to have him not sort of grounded, if you get what I'm saying, with a proper backing, with a proper manager who's, a little bit serious, who allows that sort of growth. I think it would have been a free for all if we had a lot of youngsters just in the dressing room adopting all the, little bad habits going around. So sorry about that. I just thought I wanted to add.
Yeah, I think obviously there's been some knock-on effect from, even sort of Mourinho days and probably even Van Gaal days. We haven't got it right from probably the Ed Woodward era, really, have we at all, and put a lot of blame on him. And I think equally, it's we've just got to accept that next season it's got to improve, and all hope that it does. And I think on top of that, with expecting that it will improve, I just don't think any of us expected it to be this bad this season. I think that's what's all took us by surprise. I think we expected a bit of a drop off. We expected Liverpool, Chelsea, and Man City to improve, but I don't think any of us expected us to drop so far down. But again, I've got a lot of positivity for next season. I think Ten Hag is going to grab it by the scruff of the neck, hopefully, and turn us around. But I just want to get on to Rangnick, really. I mean, I don't want to touch on this too much because I think we've talked about it quite a bit on some of the other shows, but I think that kind of caps off his reign as Man United manager as well, Stu. Just in terms of kind of how his reign has gone, do you feel like a lot of it was out of his hands? Do you think he could have done a lot more in certain areas? I know we've spoke about it a bit back and forth, but obviously I think that performance today was probably an example of where he couldn't have done much more, really, could he, today, to be fair?
Yeah, my opinion has not changed, really. I know that I think it was Ormstein's come out and said that Rangnick has had nothing to do with the back end of what's happened at Manchester United recently, which is an absolute load of bollocks. Rangnick was brought in to restructure the club. I'm absolutely convinced of it. And I think he was to take the team secondary, which is why he brought in coaches. Clearly, the coaches like Chris Amaras, he probably just isn't good enough. He's not the quality that we need at Manchester United. But you can see the traits of what Rangnick's already done by the raft of changes that have happened behind the scenes. And I think that's going to bode well for when our good friend Erik Ten Hag comes in tomorrow. Because I think he's going to be unveiled tomorrow, isn't he, by all accounts? So I've seen various things that Rangnick's, not been the right type of person and not the right coach, not the right manager. He's never really torn up trees as a manager and as a coach. What he's done, he puts a style in and he expects his coaches to go out and implement that. And then the players have got to apply that. And clearly the players haven't applied it. The coaches may have implemented it. We don't know. But on the face of it, you would suggest that somewhere along the line, from his instructions through the coaches to the players, it's gone missing. And the problem you've got is, and I've said this before and I'll keep drumming it in, as soon as you cross that white line as a player, and unfortunately the manager can't do much for 45 minutes. And as a player, as a human being and as a man, if you can't actually turn around and identify what's happening during a game of football or a 45, 50-minute half of football, you shouldn't be playing football anyway, because it's as basic as it gets. It really is. The communication is basic. You know within the first 5 minutes how a team's going to set up against you. You know within the first 5 minutes which player the opposition team wants to feed the ball through. It's very, very simple. Just use your eyes. We don't use our eyes. And I talk about common sense and football sense a lot. And we just don't or haven't shown any real football sense and common sense. Now, I was advocating that Ollie should never have been replaced. We don't know what would have happened, but there was nothing to suggest that we would have finished any higher or lower than 6 anyway. Nobody knows what would have happened. But from a structural point of view, Rangnick's come in and I think has made a huge impression on the back of it. I blame the players. I've blamed the players all season. I'll continue to blame players because you can talk about coaching, as I said, you can talk about management styles as much as you like. It's all about application. And if the player doesn't apply it on the game day, doesn't have the common sense, doesn't have a set of eyes, set of ears to see and hear what's going on during a match, you can be the best coach in the world. You can look at what Klopp has done at Liverpool and what Guardiola has done at City. He's got players that have bought into what he wants to do, but he won't accept anything less than 100%. Our players are lazy. We've got egos that completely outweigh Manchester United, and I think that's got to stop. And everything that I know about Ten Hag, that will stop. So for me, I know people will say Rangnick's been a complete waste of time. I think you've got to see the bigger picture. I really do. I think he's coming for a separate role than what has been communicated. I don't really. I know Ulmstein. I think it was him that's come out on record that's saying it was all to do with the football side. He's had nothing to do with the rear. I just don't buy that. I just he's the only one that's reported it, and I just don't buy it. So I think he's done all right, Rangnick. To be fair, you've got to look at what he's working with. You've got to look at these players. They've never put 100% in, have they? Really, they've never run that extra yard. The fullbacks have never had the protection that we needed from the wider players. The two centre halves haven't had the protection from the goalkeeper because he's rooted to his line. We can't play too deep because, well, in fact, to be fair, we should have played a little bit deeper. We should have sat 5 yards deeper. We would have cut the space in between our centre halves and the goalkeeper. There's been 100 times where you could have picked fault at the actual goal itself, and it all comes down to common sense, pure common sense. So, thanks, Brendan. Appreciate that. People blame me for a lot of stuff, to be fair, pal. So you carry on, mate. But that's what I think.
I'm a straight. What your thoughts, mate?
Yeah. No, man, I agree with a lot of what Stu said there. I do definitely put a lot of blame this season on the players. I think probably even. I'd be shocking to say, but I think at a certain point it was close to being even before halfway through the season where it looked like some of the players were just throwing their hands up all the time. Fred and that's a very true statement. Fred and McTominay were all over the pitch today and not in a good way, out of position. Both of them on one side of the field. And I think at one point I actually felt bad for Maguire, and I think a lot of people out here know how I feel about Maguire. But it was when. What's that kid, Chelsea Lowe Gallagher? That kid was kicking our ass today, and he almost put Maguire into the splits, and he dragged his shot wide. But both Fred and McTominay were out defending on the side, and nobody was in the middle. So I actually felt bad for Maguire for once. But yeah, it was ridiculous. What's his name? Dalot was on strings. Zaha was abusing him. That was ridiculous. He was putting 3-4 moves on him in one go before he even decided to try to play a pass or do something else with the ball. But yeah, the attitude of these players, I think, is one of the biggest issues. And we were in the Spaces yesterday, and I think I followed up off of God damn it, I forget his name. This is what happens when you smoke weed and do Spaces. But I was following off who was talking about it as well. But it was like we need the attitude, and it needs to come from leadership. And I was agreeing with him about the coaching, right? I hope Ten Hag comes in and, like you said, he grabs it by the scruff of the neck, and we get the right players with the right mentality in. Because it's you can't win anything at the highest level without, like Stu said before, pushing to that extra yard, even pushing yourself to the limit and over the limit. There was too many of these players who just give up, and I don't get it. I don't know if it's a money thing. It might be, but I never played any type of level in any of the sports I played. I freaking blew my knee out when I was 18 in high school, and that was the end of my sports career. But even then and even now, when you're training, when I'm playing on the field, when I'm training in the gym, and I've done it already now in the last couple months, I'm pushing myself, and I'll run and I'll train until I freaking throw up, and then I'll train some more. I don't understand how professional players at this height give up so easily. So it's definitely on the players this season. Rangnick could only do so much. I think at a certain point when he came in, he saw the mentality and the lack of quality, and he probably tried to implement his stuff, but at a certain point he realized he's not going to even be able to get through these players. So I think he gave up on them. The players gave up on the season, and yeah, like a lot of people have been saying, time to move on. Get whatever significant amount of these players that needs to get out. And I have said it a lot. I know people don't like when I bring up American sports, so I'll keep it a really short, brief one. But all my teams in the States have been shit for a little while. So I'm used to rebuilds. I'm used to struggling. I got no problem waiting for a proper rebuild. And I mean a proper rebuild. 3-4 years type rebuild.
No, thanks, Simon, for that. It is a long task on his end, and we'll come to that in terms of what Ten Hag's got to do to turn this around. Ben, we'll come to you. And do you fancy answering Tyrone's question as well, just on the keeper situation? Is that something you would think that we need to do next season? So just on Rangnick, has he been a success to you? Yes or no? And do you kind of want to attempt at answering that question?
Yeah, so for me, I agree wholeheartedly with Stu. It bugs the life out of me when I read stuff that journalists write about, oh, it's the leadership from above. Well, leadership doesn't have a tier system. Anyone can show leadership. You don't have to be in a specific position to show leadership. It comes from anybody, from the bottom to the top, and vice versa. I've got nothing but admiration for Rangnick, because he was doomed when he came in, because the players had already set their stall out with how they were going to be, with their attitude, commitment, desire, all the stuff that you would expect from a professional footballer, at least one that plays for United. So on that token, I get why he probably put the footballing aspect secondary to allowing John Murtough to do what he's done in the background. In terms of the players, I don't know how somebody can not give 100%, because to me, I mean, I'm in the military, and if you don't do what you're asked, it's so apparent compared to everybody else. Not that I'm saying that you don't have people that don't put 100% in, because you do in all walks of life, but you're a professional footballer. You've got what everyone says is the best job on earth. If you can't, even if you don't have the ability of the person you're coming up against, just to be 100%, that can sometimes be enough. But we come on, we play like the Brentford game. Brentford sort of tried to go toe to toe for us, so we looked better than we probably were. But we can't even do 45 minutes of showing commitment, let alone a full game. And I don't lay any blame at Ralf, because, like Stu said, you can have the best laid plans, which can then be delivered by the right people. But if the people who you're asking to carry out that plan don't want to, it's irrelevant. And ultimately, with the way that football is, it's such a true sport that is so glaringly obvious, because it's not like a sport where you've got a lot of moving parts which can mask your attitude. Football, it doesn't, because you're on the pitch for all to see. And if you don't want to do your job, then the person who is doing their job is hindered massively. And then that just snowballs on, because that then person thinks, well, if he ain't doing his job, why should I work twice as hard to cover for him? And then that snowballs to the next person. And before you know it, the whole team's doing it. As for that keeper question, yes, De Gea probably will be replaced at some point. But for me, there are far more glaringly apparent positions that need filling before we do anything with the keeper, in my personal opinion. De Gea is the least of our worries at the minute. He's at least, as much as he doesn't have the aspect of the sweeper keeper that, say, Alisson or Ederson do, he does what he's meant to do very, very well, aside from that point. So I would rather address the areas that we've needed to address for some time now, get those actually right, with the right people in to implement the right things that Erik Ten Hag wants of them. And you may find that the keeper aspect goes in a completely different direction because of the players that he brings in and what he's asking them to do, and what that then leads to from a styles perspective means that, you know what, Erik Ten Hag doesn't want somebody of an Alisson or an Ederson. He might go in a completely different direction, but you don't know that until the players that are in front of him, who are needed and correct, are in place.
Yeah, it's a difficult one. I think he's got a big time. We'll sort of touch on that in regards to Ten Hag and kind of how big his task is, and obviously he witnessed it himself in a snippet today, didn't he, in the stands? So we'll come on to that. Thanks, Ben. Kai, what are your thoughts kind of on Rangnick this I won't say this season. Obviously, he's had half a season, hasn't he? Really, off nearly 3/4. What's kind of your views on Rangnick, and has he been a success to you?
I have to agree with everybody, because for me, I think everyone can imagine Rangnick walked in a room, he looked at everyone and he said, okay, guys, we all know that what we have is not good enough, but let me tell you guys something. Look at what Liverpool are doing. Look at what City are doing. Look at my tactics and look at how they are similar to what they are doing. This is what you need to do to get to that level. This is the only way. This is modern football. You have to run all these yards. And they tried it for 15 minutes against Crystal Palace, and they said, nah. And if they had done it again and done it again, and then they had burnt out, and then he had to replace with some youth, and everyone was like, oh, they're getting it, but it's a little bit tough because it's mid-season and all of that stuff, then I would have been like, okay, Rangnick probably didn't completely implement it properly. But we didn't even see 5% of a Rangnick tactic in its purity at any stage, not attacking wise, it even got worse attacking wise. We even probably made more Rangnick type of plays before he arrived than when he was here in an attacking sense. So I think his job, clearly you can see that there's been some sort of, limitation that has been there. And I think the only thing which I can criticize him for, if it is a critique, is he didn't stick by his own principles and then just let everyone sync with it. But I think that may have been because he's not the same as, the next manager, and he didn't know who the next manager would be. So, of course, you don't want to completely sync everyone in your ideals when the next project is going to be different. So I do think halfway he was just like, oh, well, this is it. So I think, his hands were tied a little bit, but I still think he loses some credit with a lot of people. I think his reputation is slightly worse as a coach. But yeah, we'll see what happens upstairs, and we'll see what the vision, looks like. I think for me, that's the most important thing.
No, I appreciate it. I mean, I think it's, I don't want to have the final say on this because I do agree with all you guys, and I've already kind of had my say on it on previous shows, so I'll stick to host hat on and not say too much on this one. But I think either way, it's not been a great season, whether you look at it being a success for Rangnick or not. I think ultimately Rangnick didn't want the end result to be what it's been, did he? Regardless of whether his tactics were wrong or not. Obviously he wanted United to succeed. He wanted his tenure to succeed, and it hasn't, and that's a shame. But he still remains around the club, and hopefully he can help Ten Hag get off on the right foot next season. But just on to the Europa League, Stu, I'll come straight back onto you. Because that's something we've secured now. Something that I think probably 8 weeks ago, if that's fair to say. Something neither of us wanted when the Champions League was probably something that we all thought we'd still attain. But in reality, that is when it looked like it could be on the, dropping away. We could be in the Conference League. Is that something now we're quite happy that we've received, and albeit through Brighton helping us out a little bit? Is that something that we, is quite a big positive for United for next season? Oh, you're on mute, Stu.
Crikey. Realistically, we were never in the Champions League football. We just haven't been good enough across the 38 games, so we were never going to attain it. Even if we did, I don't really think we would have got past the last 16 next season anyway. So you've got to be realistic in terms of football. Did we want European football? Absolutely. I think when you look at the sides in the Europa League just recently, Barcelona, Inter Milan, AC Milan, there's been some good sides and some good old-fashioned games, really, when you consider the Champions League or the European Cup of the past, the yesteryear. We were all interested in AC Milan against Manchester United. We're all interested in Inter Milan against Manchester United, Real Madrid versus Barcelona, etc., etc., etc. And that really hasn't happened in the Champions League for a while now, because you've had this new money come into the game, where you've got PSG playing, City. Well, 15 years ago, that would have been unthinkable. Never would have happened. But this is where we are with money. This is one of the reasons why UEFA wants to get the glamour of the Champions League back. It's lost its charisma, the Champions League. It's all about money. It's lost exactly the essence of what Champions League football's about. I'm old school. You shouldn't be in the Champions League unless you're the title winning side. And I don't care whether you've got to play Rapid Vienna or, Sparta Prague or whatever. If they win their league, then they deserve to be in the Champions League. It's looking like in 2 or 3 years' time, we'll be able to get in by default anyway because of our history in the tournament. So I just think it's important that we play some type of European football. I think it's important for Ten Hag that he's got 4 competitions to go for. Let's hope we don't drop out of the Europa League and into the Europa Conference League, because that could happen. I think that's what happens. So that could happen. I would rather us go and make a fist of it, because by hook or by crook, you win the Europa League, you get in the Champions League the following season. So, there's a huge carrot for it. And it's something we've done before, when we won it under Mourinho. So I think if I was Ten Hag, I'd be quite happy that we've got European football. A lot of fans would prefer us not to have European football. They don't like a Thursday and a Sunday. Well, believe it or not, there's no difference between that and a Wednesday and a Saturday. It's just days. You just move a couple of days. That's all it is. So there's no, all this Thursday to Sunday. I just don't buy it. I just don't buy people's reticence about it. It's the same as a Wednesday or a Tuesday to a Saturday, or a Tuesday to a Friday night, when we've done that before in the past. So any footballer wants to play European football. I just think they get wrapped up in the myth that is the Champions League at the minute. And it's not the greatest competition. It was much, much better when it was a European Cup. So for me, Ten Hag should be able to utilise his squad better. With us being in Europe, it does mean if he does want to play some youngsters to give him game time, he can focus on the Carabao Cup. Let's utilise him in that. Let's utilise him in some games, after game 10 or 11, just to see how we started the first quarter of the season, and try and look at it from that point of view. So, that's how I view it.
No, thanks, Stu. Hammer, your view on securing Europa League football, good thing, I suppose. You agree?
I mean, comparatively, like Stu kind of said, I think we were just hanging around. We weren't actually in the competition to finish in that position for Champions League. But yeah, I think trophy-wise is the biggest thing, right? I think some of these players who might still be here, we haven't won any type of proper trophy since Mourinho left, right? When we last won Europa League or something. And I think it's a confidence thing that'll help. I think it's an opportunity for youth to get more playing time as well. I don't know. Everybody's always been talking about. I know how Ronaldo's going to feel about playing in Europa League. Mr. Champions League, all that, the goals and all that shit. But yeah, it's a good opportunity for Ten Hag to see more of his players and to see who he can utilize in terms of depth, because I think that's a very important thing at the top, right? I heard, was it today? I was watching some pregame stuff or something before the City game, and they were talking about, right, like in Liverpool's case, I believe, how he has that depth, right? And he has players who are just waiting there to get their chances in whatever tournament, but they're still quality players, right? So that's where you're going to be able to see who the quality players are once we have more stuff. And then, for me, again, I think everybody knows we're not going to be competing for a league title for a long time. So if we can be in however number of tournaments to try to get a trophy, I think that's an important thing.
Sorry, I was just looking at the mute button there. It's like I say, it's going to be it's going to be a big task we've got on his hands. I think even with the Europa League, I think it's something that I think it's at our level at the minute, isn't it, as well, and something where I feel like we look at that as opposed maybe a season or 2 seasons ago, where you're going into Europa League with a bit of expectation. I think we're going into that Europa League with stiff competition, aren't we, this time and stuff. So, Ben, what's your views on the Europa League? Is it something that we go there to win, or with Ten Hag's first season in charge, is that something that we just got to make sure we use as a bit of a springboard for maybe next season after?
No, for me, I agree with what Stu and Hammer said. I look at it as, if we had a blagged fourth, gone into it next season with Erik Ten Hag, and then because he's obviously not had that amount of time with the players to get them into a system that they want to play, and obviously coming into the expectation of the Champions League with all the pressure that builds, and then we get knocked out in the group stage, the negativity then put on the team and him going into the Europa would be catastrophic. Whereas you look at, I take the I've got a friend of mine who I work with who's Scottish, and he was talking about Rangers and Celtic and how Rangers and Celtic very rarely get into the Champions League group stages, and sometimes they fail at the sort of the hurdle before it. But their Rangers now, it's nothing but massive positivity about their running the UEFA in the Europa League because of how well they've done. And for me, I would rather us go into it from the very beginning because one, that's where we are, whether we like it or not. Two, it's a more realistic competition to win, and you've got a lot more of a blend of teams that are involved than you have in the Champions League, like Stu said. And four, it's a trophy, and you go directly into the first pot if you win it. And the springboard that could give Erik Ten Hag if he was to achieve it couldn't be underestimated, because he goes and wins it, for argument's sake, next season. The landscape that then offers him is just massive compared to we managed to get fourth off of Arsenal and he gets knocked out in the group stage, like that season when Fergie did to Benfica. And it was like the world was going to end because it was Fergie. And obviously, it's not necessarily a common theme with him, but we do it with Erik Ten Hag, and it's all like, oh, United can't get past the group stage. It's just more negativity, and the media jump on that bandwagon, and that just churns even more for him. Whereas for me, like Stu said, you've got European football, the attraction for the players, along with the club. You've got the other two competitions, cup competitions, to blood the youngsters in. So you're not feeling that pressure then to have to play them all the time. It gives him more opportunity to work on the system that he wants to do, more time to bed the players in with the methodology that he wants to get across to them. And it's a competition that if we win it, it takes away the fact that we've got still a couple of years to go before we're competing fully for the league. Because look at what it did to Sevilla. They won it 3 times on the bounce. And look at the players that they could then attract because of it, and the income that it generated, and the wages that they could then offer players because they were so successful in it. They weren't getting slandered in the press in Spain for not competing in the Champions League. It was Spanish dominant in Europe again, another trophy. Again, done won it a second time. Oh, they've done it a third time. They're beating all these English teams who've got all this money. It was always positive, and that's how we've got to be, because there's nothing wrong with accepting where you are from a levels perspective. But it's then realizing that and then putting something in place to then better yourself, not looking at it just as a negative, because then you then don't have that correct attitude and mindset to want to improve, because it's all, oh, well, I want to be in the Champions League. Well, you're not. So get over it and let's progress forward. And you'll sign, for me, a truer player, because you won't get players that will come to the club just for the dollar. Because I don't think Erik Ten Hag will see that instantly, and he'll instantly get rid of them. It'll be, yep, I'm happy to be Europa League football because I'm happy with what you're telling me for where I'm going to be as a player and where the club's going.
It's a valid point, that, isn't it? Yeah, I mean, like, we're going to get, obviously, they know they're not going to get Champions League football now next season. They're going to come with a view of trying to, cooperate in building something new for Man United, and that in itself is probably going to bring the right sort of characters to the team, isn't it? So it's a valid point, Ben. I appreciate that, mate. Kai, over to you on the Europa League viewpoint. Are you kind of looking forward to that, or is that something that is kind of I don't know if it's bittersweet or what?
It's a competition. It's a competition. And I mean, I grew up on Champions League, so it's been very hard to get behind the Europa League ever. So I'm gonna find it hard to. I mean, the last time we were in it as well, I think when we won it under Jose, I also wasn't a big fan of that season, and I also wasn't a big fan of the trophy either. So it's good that we're in it though, because I think when we have a more stable team, then we can then test out some of the youngsters, give them some European experience as well. Obviously, depending on how it's going in the league, if you're going to focus on winning it, then at least you also give everyone the vibe of playing European football, I guess, because I think everyone does take the Europa League a little more seriously these days. People watch it a lot more on TV because there's a lot more big teams that are, always, thrown into the Europa League at some stage. So I think, to be fair, the beginning stages of it will be just trying to get through it, going through the motions. But I do think inevitably, when Sporting and Benfica and Dortmund get dropped from the Champions League, then it's going to start getting a little more spicier, and then it's going to be a little more for competition in a European sense. So I do think we'll play some big matches if we get further. So yeah, it's all right. But again, everything that we can say is all right is greeted with the fact that we needed Brighton to win in order to be in it. So it's everything is just kind of like so I guess it's an slightly empty victory or that one, but again, it's European football, so when it gets exciting, we must just go for it and just be as shameless as we can as United fans. And also, I mean, the nice thing about Ten Hag is that he is very good in Europe as well. So he also understands how to play Europe as well. He understands how to break teams down, because he really puts teams to the sword in Europe. Like, I know his teams may not get a bit further, but if you look at the average of how his teams perform, the average of goals they score, it's not really normal for Champions League football. So essentially, he understands this continental football and how to influence that and all of that. So I guess it'll be fun. Let's say that. It'll be fun.
Yeah, and John sort of agrees with you there as well. I think we've got to just embrace it, haven't we? And good evening to John as well, a regular on the show. So yeah, I totally agree. I think it's something. It's starting. The profile of the competition has got bigger, I think, over the last few years, and I think it's definitely something to play for. As Stu said, there's a big carrot at the end of it as well, with the Champions League being able to being an automatic qualification spot as well. So I think that's it's a big competition these days, isn't it? I think we've got to embrace it and use it as a bit of a platform to integrate some of these potential new players that we're going to see next season. So just coming on to that then, really, Ten Hag's job next season, obviously, everything that's gone on this season and a lot of the players that are exiting Man United, how big, Stu, is Ten Hag's job next season? I think we kind of know the answer, but can you kind of sum it up for us as well as the other guys in terms of how difficult his job is next season? And what's the expectations as well on top of that?
Yeah, look, fan expectation is going to be that 12 players get booted out of the club and we bring 12 players in. It just isn't going to happen. Well, there'll be some natural wastage, there always is. But there are one or two players, such as Juan Mata, that consideration should be about keeping, because you're going to need somebody. And I've said this on plenty of time. When you're bringing players in, when you're bringing young players in, you need players on that pitch that can coach, on-field coach. And Matt has got that type of personality. I think we need him around the club. He can, probably mentor and look after the younger players. It only needs one senior player. These players need to look at Juan Mata every day, see what time he arrives, see what he eats, see what his schedule is, see how he looks after himself before every game and after every game. So what's his schedule? What does he do after the game? That type of thing. These are the types of players you need in a dressing room. The biggest issue you're going to have is, and people will talk about, let's get rid of X, Y, and Z. That's absolutely fine. Get rid of them. But then you're only going to be able to bring in maybe a quarter or maybe even a third of the players that are leaving through the door. So what do you do? And I made a point on our group chat the other day that you can't just, cull your squad. You've got to have some kind of ideas or some kind of plan implemented as to what you're going to do with it. And I think Ten Hag knows it's going to be 3 or 4 years before he will finally get and be able to churn out the types of players that he wants to leave and the types of players he wants to bring in. And we're all forgetting we've got Diallo out on loan, you've got Martial out on loan, you've got Levitt out on loan, you've got Tuanzebe out on loan, you've got Garner out on loan. I think, what's that, 5 players straight away. So there's a lot of juggling with a bloated squad that we've got. So it's all right moving players out. You've just got to make sure you move the right players out and keep the key players. They're not, by the way, these players might not be first team footballers that we're looking to keep, but you need good squad players around you. And we don't know what's going to happen with Ronaldo. Ten Hag wants to work with him. I don't think he'll be the spear for next season. I don't think he'll be our focal point. So Ten Hag needs to address centre midfield. We all know that. That's the number one priority. We know all of this. We need to bring in a striker to play alongside either Ronaldo or to play in place of Ronaldo when Ronaldo's not in the squad. And we need. I don't think we're desperate in defence, and the reason I say that is because I think we've got goalkeeping issues. I tend to agree with Yeatsy. Sorry, mate, I don't know your first name. Apologies. I've probably not been listening. My fault.
Ben.
Ben, sorry, Ben. I agree with you, Ben. I don't think it's a priority. But I think when you look and understand football, you know that goalkeeping is a massive part of the game. There's always a central spine we talk about. Your goalkeeper, your two centre-halves, in central defensive midfielder. They just haven't worked together at all. They just haven't clicked. And people are hating on Maguire. They're saying this, they're saying that. And there's more to it than just Maguire making mistakes. That's all I'll say about that. So he's got to really think long and hard. If he's going to give, if they're going to give him 150 to 200 million, you've got to spend that wisely. You can't just go and blow 100 million on Declan Rice. As much as the fans want it, you can't do that. We might get player sales on top as well, but just say he's got 150 million. Then you've got to really look around and see exactly who's going to fit into your mould. Now, I've heard that Timber is pretty much close to signing. I think he'll be a good buy. Can play centre half. He can also play right back. But if he plays right back, is he going to get exposed by Sancho or by Rashford? So these are the types of questions you've got to ask before you put a new player into that position. There are other things and other areas that need to happen before you start bringing in new players. And I think what you might find Ten Hag will do, he might bring him in closed doors under the radar at some point over the next 2 to 3 weeks and say, look, this is what I want from you. I want to have a couple of practice matches. This is what I'll be doing. They could have 2 weeks holiday off as far as I'm concerned, because they've spent most of the season on holiday as it is. So have a couple of weeks off, bring them back in. Let's see where we are. Have a couple of practice matches. This is what I want from you. If you're right-sided wide players 20 yards in front of you and he should be 10, you want to be pulling him back. You want to be screaming. This is a type of common sense, standard football knowledge that isn't difficult, that everyone's got, that our players don't seem to grasp. So it's all right bringing players in. There'll be a huge discussion now. Let's go for him. Let's go for him. Let's go for him. People wanted Darwin Núñez. I think he's okay as a putting the ball in the back of the net. He's fucking woeful outside of it, though. His touch is awful. He hasn't quite got what we need. We need a bit of a more all-rounded type of striker. No point going for Harry Kane. He'd be perfect for us, by the way. There's no point going for him because you're looking at 80 to 100 on that one. He's got 2 years left on his contract. So we need to really start thinking about the profile, not who's going to sell shirts, not who's great on Instagram, which I've read an article today. Some of the players are worried about too many Instagram followers on certain players, Jesse Lingard being one of them, Paul Pogba being another. It's all right being out injured and then posting a video of yourself doing keepy-ups in your basements. Nobody really cares about that, mate. We want you on that pitch. So squad balance, really developing the squad is going to be very, very tricky. Very, very tricky this summer. It's going to be a very, very difficult balance. And I'm not so sure that Ten Hag will be able to come up and rip it up completely. I think we are going to have to look at maybe 3 or maybe 4 incomings, depending what he can do in terms of, we know the players like Cavani, we know Matic is gone, Cavani's gone, we know Lingard's gone. So we know 3 for a start. Whatever fringe players he does want to move on. So it's a difficult task he's got. It really has. Expectations for me. Well, common sense is the first thing. I'd like to see some common sense instilled into the team. Secondly, I'd like to see players have that want and that will and be able to apply what Ten Hag is looking for. But more importantly, I'd like to see us put a winning run of 10 to 11 games together on the bounce. Once you do that, it doesn't really matter where it takes you, by the way. It might take you to a cup final. It might take you to a semi-final. It might take you to 6th in the Premier League. But you need that run of 10 to 11 games, winning games, not drawing, but but winning games. And that just instills a bit of confidence in you. And I think we're so lacking that because we've drawn too many and lost too many. We haven't won enough. So I would like to see us go on a winning streak of 10 to 11 games.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, Stu. Go on, Hammer. Straight on to you, mate. Thanks, Stu.
Yeah, man. I mean, I think I will say though, I know Stu always talks about, he's experienced the lowest of lows as well from watching it for so long. But I have a feeling that might have been a little rough to say there, that what you want from next season is just to see better attitude over everything else, and being able to get that mentality. But no, yeah, man, I think it's going to be tough. It's going to be an interesting summer. I tweeted the other day, because a lot of people, like Steve mentioned, are talking about there's going to be 10 plus players out, which is a possibility because I think there's at least a handful of players who are leaving just end of contract on a free, moving on. I feel like Match is going to retire. I haven't heard if he's going to go to another club. Maybe he'll go to MLS. I don't know, but yeah, it's possible. And honestly, Matches would probably do really well in the MLS because of all the shit he can do that he can still do with his feet, but he doesn't have to run as much. But yeah, it's the spine that everyone talks about that's been on my mind the most. I'm not going to shit on Maguire as I've done in the past because, one, he's been injured for a little while, so there's no point in doing that. And then two, like Stu said, he does make mistakes, so his mistakes does the talking. I know he struggles and has positives and negatives, but I do think a center back is going to come in and might be necessary because for some reason we still haven't found a partnership that can work consistently enough to go for a 10-12 win games on the bounce like Stu would like to see. There was too many mistakes, too many out of position, too many dropping forms. I hope we fix that midfield. I hope that's the top of the list in, at least two midfielders, definitely a defensive midfielder and maybe even another one. And then I think what we're going to have to wait to see is how many players actually come back when Ten Hag requests them to come back. Because then we're going to see how committed certain people are. We're going to see how committed they are to actually trying to change the course that United has been on a very negative course for a very long time at this point. And then in terms of next season, specifically, once we get past the summer and we get into playing, I hope the fan base, even though I don't have a lot of belief that they will, I hope that they adjust what their expectations are and gives this manager time to actually implement what he's trying to do. Because if we start the season rough and the fan base starts calling for his head already, who are we going to get? There's no second option right now to Ten Hag. I don't want Poch. I know some people like him, but I don't want him. So a second option, if we decide to cut off Ten Hag's head as a fan base, is somebody a hell of a lot worse. So it's going to be a rough summer. I hope the right things get brought in to balance the team, like Stu said. But I also hope that the fan base overall can adjust their expectations and give Ten Hag the time that he needs to actually change some things.
Well, I'll just add one thing quickly, fellas, is that by the time we start in the first week of August, he's going to have 3 months to get some kind of momentum, and then it's going to get chopped. And if you're going into the World Cup break or whatever you want to call it, and you've got no momentum, it's going to be almost impossible to come out the other side with any kind of momentum because your squad's going to be torn up again. It's going to be so fragmented because there'll be some players that will be kicked out after the first group stage. There'll be some players that go all the way to the final in clubs. So you've really got 3 months of trying to get some kind of momentum. You've got to win, I think, a lot of your games this side of Christmas. Now, I know it sounds stupid and people say, well, you need to anyway, but we've never had a World Cup start at the end of November before and go through the whole of December. So how that's going to work, I don't know, but it's something you've got to consider. I'm sure it's something Ten Hag is looked at. So he will want to pick up the bulk of his points this side of the World Cup.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree with that. I mean, it's going to be a weird one, isn't it? I think it could be a weird one for every team, though, really. There's going to be a massive shake-up, isn't it? It could be quite similar to a COVID year where the season is so erratic with that World Cup sort of slap bang in the middle of everything. So it's going to be very interesting for all teams, whether good or bad, we're not so sure. But no, I agree with what you both said there on the Ten Hag situation. He's got a mammoth task, hasn't he? I think, and he's just got to try his best to try and get his feet under the table and get some level of stability in some of these games where we seem like we've got a bit of control. I was quite interested to hear what Rangnick said in his press conference leading up to this game this weekend, where he said he believes that they could turn it around in 2 or 3 transfer windows, which I thought was quite. I think he's reined his expectations in a little bit there from what he said originally, where he was sort of saying it could take up to 6 years to turn this around. So I don't know what's given him that kind of switch around and that U-turn moment, but I was quite shocked to hear him say that.
It goes back to planning, though, doesn't it? That all leads to one thing, and that's strategic planning. So for him to come out and say that, if he thinks we can do it in 2 to 3, they must have an idea what's happening. Well, he will have an idea what's happening in the summer months straight away, and that he's obviously confident that he can get those 3 or 4 players he's Ten Hag wants. They must be quite confident of that, because Rangnick's, if anything, he's quite honest. He's quite brutal in his honesty. So if he's come down and said we might be able to do it between the next 3 transfer windows, that's this summer, January, and the following summer. That's quite an interesting comment.
Yeah, I feel like for him to say that, there must be at least a few players in the pipeline already. And also players like that Ten Hag wants for his specific style.
Yeah. Considering you were sort of saying we were like 6 years off before, which he's reined that projection in a little closer to. That's probably like a year and a half, 2 years, isn't it now? But Ben, sorry to keep you waiting, and obviously we'll go on to Kai straight after. What's your thoughts on kind of on all that and how much Ten Hag has got in front of him and how big the job is essentially?
I don't know whether it's just me, but I don't see it as a huge job, in the sense of, and I'll explain, in the sense of he's chosen to come to United because of what the club's sold him and what he wants to go and do as a manager and prove himself. So all the stuff that's gone before, for him, if I was him, it's irrelevant. That's got nothing to do with me. From this moment onwards, I'm going to implement what I want from the team. Because if you start saying it's a huge job, it just brings added pressure that you don't need. So for me, I like what Stu said. I don't think you can underestimate what Ralf and John Murtough have done within all the negativity that's been going on whilst we've been playing still this season. Because you're not going to go and do what they've done unless you've got something seriously lined up that he's probably demanded when he went for his interview to be given the job in the first place, because this is what he wants, coupled with what Ralf knows from the role he does anyway, of where the club needs to be and how it needs to be moving forward progressively and quickly, for him to then obviously turn around and say what he said as well with regards the time frame to catch up to the other 2 clubs. So for me, in terms of expectations, briefly for Erik Ten Hag, all I want to see is at the end of 90 minutes, I can see, first of all, a style, and then secondly, a group of players who from minute 1 to minute end don't stop. They do absolutely everything that I saw under Fergie. Committed, application, attitude, desire, all the stuff that you'd expect anyway, which we've not seen since Fergie. With obviously that bit of stardust that he's going to bring in from the players that he's going to bring in. In terms of outgoings and incomings, I'm a bit with Stu. It's kind of almost fell quite fortuitously for him with all those players that are out of contract who I wouldn't have kept anyway. I wouldn't have kept Pogba. I wouldn't have kept Lingard. Matic, as much as he's a great pro, I wouldn't have kept him, because we need to start thinking what you do now affects the long term. So you need to bring in someone who's of a similar ilk to Matic in terms of positional sense and position, but younger. There's no point keeping him because he's then just taking the place of someone that you could have brought in who's younger. You're going to again have natural wastage, like Stu said. So the landscape's going to be a lot clearer for him. And for me, I would rather see a trickle feed of players coming in over those windows who are coming in to do the right job that's required of them in that position they're getting brought into, than you do what Fulham did when they got promoted and go and buy 10 players, because it doesn't work. There's too many moving parts there to try and sort out. So I would rather he brings in the right players fundamentally for positions that need filling, that are going to do a job for what he wants from the team, not as an individual, because that will be a byproduct of what the team do anyway. And for me, like Stu said, if I just want to see these last 10 years, I would have it in his office as league positions where we finished, because ultimately that is your biggest competitor is where you finished previously. That is the yardstick that we've set ourselves. So as long as we beat that the following season, other success will follow on from that. There's no point saying he needs to go, like I've heard some people go, he needs to finish a guaranteed top 4, he needs to win at least 2 trophies, and he needs to go and bring in 8 players. Well, unless you're not playing Football Manager and you're on the moon if you think that. I just want to see a team that progresses naturally, does the fundamentals that we expect from players, shows some character, shows an imprint on the game, and everything else will follow suit. I do think the one thing I am really looking forward to, which I think, and I've read a lot from journalists from Holland who know quite a bit about Erik Ten Hag and from ex-players from within Holland who know him quite well personally, have said that he is very black and white. So as a player, you can't bluff him when it comes to signing. He's not going to sign people that bluff. He's going to sign specific people for specific positions because of the job they do, because of what they offer as a person. And we haven't seen that since Fergie left. We have signed commercial entities for shirt sales and people that have managed to bluff Ed Woodward because of their agent in demanding the earth. And I think that's gone now. I think that what happened before Ten Hag started has gone. I think that way of us bringing in players is gone now. I think we're going to actually see what an elite club should be doing in terms of the football that they're bringing into the fans through the players that they're signing, and they're signing players for the club, not because of what it does for the likes or in the clothing store for shirt sales. That will follow suit. If you're a successful team, it doesn't matter whether we sign 8 nobodies. If you're successful, that's a byproduct of you being successful, is the shirt sales, is the commercial deals that come in because you're being successful as a team, not because you've gone and signed someone who's got 800 million followers on Instagram. All of that follows you being successful, and you don't have to be somebody to be successful. You become somebody from being successful. That's the difference. We sign people who think they're successful but offer nothing. It should be the other way around.
No, appreciate that, Ben. It's well said, and I agree with everything you've said. I think we've got to be realistic and got to be level-headed next season. I certainly think that way, and I think whatever he does next season is just a platform for the season after. I think that's when you really kind of judge Ten Hag, probably the season after. But for next season, it's just getting some level of stability on this and see where we go from there. So the thing is, sorry, Reece, just to finish before Kai comes in,
I've already seen, as much as mad as this may sound, there's already been a sea change in our approach, because look at the amount of concrete stuff you're hearing in terms of players that are close to coming in. That was never the case prior to all this happening. We were trying to do deals on the last day of the season and offering stupid money, whereas now you're seeing like Stu said, timber thing. That for us has been done at light speed compared to previous deals that we've done with players, and that for me can only be a positive moving forward into the summer, like Stu said.
Yeah, I mean, is that definitely been confirmed, that one? Because I think the one big thing that United have been quite poor at in recent years has been those sagas where we've been linked to players and it never really happening and it going on season to season.
I read an article from a journalist who is very well regarded, and actually Edwin van der Sar mentioned him. He's retired now, but he does the odd bit in he only does Dutch football, and he pretty much said that Timber will be signed by United. That pretty much was a done deal, because when you listen to some of the interviews that Erik Ten Hag gave prior to leaving Ajax, and the fact that Ajax didn't even try to put in a clause that he couldn't bring any players with him.
Right. Well, seeing is believing, Ben. I'm gonna.
Obviously the proof is in the pudding.
I trust your opinion, mate, but as we have been this season, it's been a tough one this season. So I've seen it's definitely 100% believing for me. But no, I get your point in terms of making sure that we pretty much get on the front foot with these signings, and I'm sure Ten Hag's got a really clear picture of what he wants to do. I'm sure he's regularly speaking to Rangnick, albeit Rangnick said he's not met him yet. I find that quite hard to believe, maybe in person, but I'm sure he's spoken to him several times in the last couple of months. So, yeah, we'll see. I appreciate that, Ben. Thank you very much. We're going to finish because we're an hour and 10 minutes into this, and I appreciate everybody that starts watching. It's flown by, considering the negativity of today's result. But Kai, you've got the kind of final say on Ten Hag, and we're kind of adding into that just because we've not managed to get around it really. But I think everyone's going to slightly touch on it at some point about the youth for next season, and will we see a little bit of an introduction in that next season via Ten Hag or not? So just your views on that, Kai, overall, mate, for Ten Hag's job next season and everything else coming with that.
All right. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah. Can you?
Yeah.
All right. Cool. Sorry. My laptop decided to do a BIOS update right now, and then I had to switch
I had
to my
that
phone.
the other week. I was on a show, and then all of a sudden it starts doing an update.
Yeah,
Just
like I'm like, okay. So I can't even see my notes anymore, but I have to remember. Yes. So okay. So I was chilling the other day, and I was like, I'm excited for the next season to start. And then of course, because I'm involved in like a lot of like football in in the leagues around here in the Netherlands. I just started having a chat with some people, just trying to find out, of course, about Ten Hag, and I've been to a few Ajax training sessions as well, just some of those public type of training sessions, and watching Ajax a lot. And what you realize is, if most of the players that we had this last season are the same players that are gonna have to come in early, and the same players that are gonna have to start next season, then there's even more for Ten Hag to do. It's not just football, it is a whole mentality shift. So he's going to have to start from trying to say to these guys, okay, the same thing which Ragnick said at the beginning, which was, this is what you need to do to get to the level of these teams. You've got to be at 100 miles an hour, like that thing that Liverpool does. The only way to chase City is for them to be on 100 miles an hour, full on every single week, 2 games a week, 3 games a week. Can you guys do that? And I think if Ten Hag has a dressing room which is, again, divided like we've had, or a dressing room which is mostly people trying to lean on one side and people trying to lean on the other side, then I think his job gets even more difficult, because we hired psychologists when Ragnick came in and it didn't even help. So I think it just, in terms of when you have to condense it down to more than football, I think that mentality side is what is the most important, because you just firstly want these guys to care so that they can be able to do the bare minimums of what a footballer can do on a pitch, 5 yards and all of that. So I do think that in that view, it is hard, because you can't even say forget about the past, because our recruitment has been so bad that we just carry baggage anyways all the time. So luckily we have a lot of players leaving again, but we just have to hope that this stuff isn't in 75% of the club or 75% of the players, this type of mentality that they have. Even if Ten Hag is, firm and all of that, it still takes a while to get rid of players. You still have to keep some players on side, even when you see a whole clique is reacting a certain type of way, because it's Manchester United. It's different. The players here have stupid contracts, like you have to play the X amount of games, or you have to do this little thing, or you have to reach this milestone, which is why Maguire plays all the time, probably. So it's a different dynamic, I think, just because Ajax is somewhere where he has all the support in the world. He's got Mark Overmars, he's got Van der Sar, he's got a lot of people doing what he says is the right thing and also genuinely agree with him. So I do think this time it's not going to be, because we've seen it's a player's issue. So I really hope that we're able to get rid of that real nucleus of players, and I think Rangnick looks like a tittle-tell. So I think he's been writing so many notes, about which players to trust and which players not to trust. And I think it's, a lot of players sign, like you were saying, a lot of players sign for United because they think that they're successful. But I think a lot of players sign for United because that is their success. So they don't try any harder after that. They've reached the top. That is because they're players which aren't good enough anyways to be anything even better than that. So yeah, that's my thing with Ten Hag. I think it's tough. Like trust me, like the Eredivisie is so different from the Premier League, and still PSV took him right to the wire. And and they whoop everyone here as well. So it's going to be a very interesting season where we have to be patient. We have to stand by the manager and that structure if it works, and stop this FC player type of thing. And I really think the club has to take that new direction. And by the way, David De Gea, please. We know, guys, we all know he's not this era's goalkeeper, guys. Like, he is one of the problems, one of the main problems, I'd say, because he doesn't even talk about himself as a back four. He talks about himself as himself. Hey, I had a great season this year. Like, come on, who says something like that to the world? I should pat myself on the back, because most keepers say we were terrible defensively this season, because things like clean sheets and all that is as a result of the collective. And I just don't think David De Gea is up to that footballing wise in which we need to do as a club if we want to move forward. Thanks a lot. That's about it.
Yeah, it's an interesting topic as well. I'm sure at some stage there'll be lots more coming up from All for United on some of those topics in the transfer highlights, as well as they're coming through, and some of the transfer news in the next few weeks, because that'll be, I'm sure, blowing up for United, and I'm sure David De Gea won't be shy of speculation as well in amongst that. But yeah, we're now nearly 20 minutes into this, guy. So I've really appreciated that. Obviously, not a great result for United today. Ends the season with a slight negative to that, despite the fact that we do secure Europa League football for next season, which is another positive. But I think, although this is our last reaction show, which is another kind of, leaves it on a slight sour note. Thanks to Stu, Hammer, and Kai and Ben, who have added some light in the shade of that. And I'm sure we'll meet again in next season. From me, I'm really appreciate everybody that's watched. I think we've had quite a few people on today, and quite a few comments as well, and some likes. So I really appreciate that, guys. If you haven't already and you're still watching, don't forget to subscribe and like and share and do all the good stuff on that as well. And if you do watch it back again, do all that as well if you wouldn't mind. And follow us on Twitter as well, at All for United on Twitter, if you don't already do that. But again, thanks to Stu, Hammer, Kai, and Ben. You've been great as always, guys. Thank you. It makes my life loads easier when you guys all fill in. So thank you for that. And we'll catch you in the next one, guys. Cheers.
Cheers, guys.